Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. My name is Leon Jones, and tonight I'm going to get into something that I believe is political or can be religious, but it is one of the five power conferences of society that I always talk about. And it goes along the way of religion. Now, I'm going to talk about cults. Now, what is a cult? Particularly a religious cult. You've had people like David Koresh, Jim Jones, and there have been other cults out there. And one of the reasons why I want to do this video is because if you look at the Democratic Party as well, particularly on the socialist side, what they're doing is they're indoctrinating the weak to hate America, the weak to hate success. But if you look at a lot of these religious cults, they do the same thing. Now, I know a number of you aren't watching this, but I'm watching it. Now, I'm not a fan of all of Tyler Perry's movies because they pick black men as the scabs, the sorry dudes, sorry Negroes, whatever. They depict the black men as losers. But I'm going to tie this documentary, and it's a series. It is called Ruthless. Now, Ruthless is about a cult. The Rakudushi. The Rakudushi. Now, one thing you need to understand about cults is when it comes to recruiting people, just like everything else, it seems to me that they go for the weak. And the ones who are strong minded in the cult, or they try to leave, or they don't believe in what the cult is doing, they're literally killed. Now, I will say this, even about Tyler Perry's movie, there's a structure. Now, I don't have to agree with what they're doing because it really has nothing to do with Jesus. Now, in Tyler Perry's movie, what they're doing, they're utilizing the cartel's money. Now, you have a lot of people that you would believe who are the good guys who are bad, particularly sheriff and some of the FBI members. Now, with all that, why am I doing this? Well, first of all, let's get into sharing my screen and let's give you a definition of a religious cult. And believe it or not, there are a number of them out there, ones that are being investigated today. Now, there was one, and I look at his videos. I don't know if it's a cult or not. Straightway, that's Pastor Dow. In fact, here in Indiana, he even has a community. Now, what he does when he preaches from the Old Testament. Now, again, I am not a Bible scholar, so I'm only going by what I see. Any Bible scholars, you help me out, you leave a comment in the comment section. Is what Pastor Dow doing? Is it a cult or is it a ministry? You be the judge on that. What I will tell you about a cult, it is a system of religious veneration. In modern colloquial usage, it typically refers to an insular, unorthodox group led by a charismatic leader. Now, when I say charismatic leader, there's a couple of branches in political economics that have charismatic leaders as well. If you guess socialism and communism, you're right. Now, this charismatic leader exercises authoritarian control over members' lives, often involving isolation from society and the exploitation of followers. So, the evolution of the term cult carried no negative connotation. It derived from the Latin cultus, meaning care of adoration, and was simply used to describe the rituals and worship practices devoted to a deity or saint. Today, because cult is highly pejorative, sociologists and researchers prefer to use the term NRM, which stands for New Religious Movement, to describe alternative or countercultural spiritual groups. Now, the common defining characteristics of any cult. Let me get back to the Tyler Perry part in a moment. Just tell you all about it so you can watch it on your own. Now, going back to the common defining characteristics of a cult. While traditional religions are generally accepted within mainstream society, groups labeled as cults often exhibit these features: authoritarian leadership, just like an authoritarian government. A single charismatic leader claims special insight or divine status, making their word unquestionable. Now, in the Bible, you're not supposed to worship any man. So this type of leader, like a Jim Jones, represents himself as God. You also have isolation. Members are systematically cut off from family, friends, and mainstream society to deepen their dependency on the group. Exploitation. Members are often exploited financially, emotionally, or physically. Mind control. That's one of the biggest things you need to understand. The group employs systematic manipulation to control behavior, information, and thoughts. An exclusive truth. The belief that the group is the only way to achieve salvation, enlightenment, or truth. Now, if you think about that, does that sound like the communist or a dictatorship or an authoritarian government? Yes, it does. Now, I am going to, and nobody's doing it but me. I'm going to share this, and I'm not a real fan of Wikipedia, but I am going to talk to you about a cult, and if you see it on TV, this should help educate you about what goes on in a cult. And I'm talking about Ruthless is the TV series. Now, again, Ruthless is an American drama series created, produced, written, and directed by Tyler Perry. The series is produced under Perry's overall deal with Viacom and CBS. It is basically a spinoff from the BET drama, The Oval. Now, there are 6 seasons. Right now, I'm watching season 4. The 6th season is set to premiere any moment. Now, you must understand this from the Tyler Perry movie or the documentary Ruthless. Once you know the plot, you can watch it for yourself and you can see where the commonalities lie between authoritarian governments, religious control, mind control, and you can see the man being worshipped by God, well, as a God. And if there's any dissent you see what happens to the centers. Now, with this documentary, they're actually using religion, but that religion is just a cover up for what they really want as money. Doesn't your church do that? So basically, in a backdoor pilot during the first 3 seasons of The Oval, Ruth Truesdale kidnaps her daughter, Callie, to join her and the sex-crazed members of the Rakudushi cult. Ruth gains status within the cult after assisting in the punishment of her friend Callie, which basically earns her the position of elder. However, in order to be initiated into the position of elder, she is required to be ganged, RAPED, by 7 high-ranking cult members, and this is in the first season, including Andrew and Daikon. Now, Daikon is the second person in charge. In fact, in this movie, they really want the women mind control to be pure, and a number of these guys, they're engaging in wild sex with each other, particularly your highest, who is played by Matt Sedano. Matt Sedano is the leader of the Rakudushis. They call him your highest. And his demeanor, although very calm and peaceful and welcoming, when you feed him some drugs, he gets very angry. Now, there is a elder in there, they call her elder mother from Jamaica. She's from Jamaica, really from Jamaica. Well, a lot of the members, they talk about her food. Within these cults, they drug people. And that's exactly what the elder mother is doing with the food. Now, getting back to Matt Sedano, with his very, very calm, cool, and welcoming demeanor, all that is to cover up the fact that he is a sexual sadist, and he uses drugs to make newcomers black out and lose all memory in order to violently RAPED them. He himself is also a drug addict. Then you have Daikon, played by Lenny Thomas. He's basically a high-ranking cult member who is the right hand to the highest. He is the overseer of everything that happens on the cult's property. Daikon is, of course, revealed to be very loyal. He is extremely invasive and stern. Now, one thing I will say about Tyler Perry movies, all of the black people, teeth are clean, well-groomed, well-dressed, and they play the part well. Now, when you really look at Daikon, in season 1, episode 7, Daikon and the highest have been in a same-sex relationship for over a decade. Understand that Daikon goes both ways. He has been having a secret affair with Ruth and is also attracted to Lynn. Daikon has fallen in love with Ruth. However, Ruth is using him to plan her escape from the cult. Now, one thing you're going to see in this movie, you're going to see a lot of loyalty and disloyalty at the same time, and a lot of manipulation, not just with the highest, but with members of the cult going against each other and going against the highest. Now, if you look at Ruth, which Ari knew, Ruth faked her pregnancy. But everyone believes that Ruth is carrying the highest child. Now, looking at everything, the highest I believe is suspicious about Daikon and Ruth after they've been together. Now, something else. You have FBI members who have infiltrated into this cult as well. They've been captured. Now, I'm only giving you what I'm looking at because I'm only on season 4. But I'm tying it all together. And in order for you to understand what I'm talking about when it comes to cults, you need to watch Ruthless because it is very ruthless. You see violent sex, you see individuals not obeying the rules, you see individuals with harsh punishments, you see authoritarianism, you see the disloyalty amongst individuals, you see a lot of the brainwashing. That is real big in a cult. This is what happened with Jim Jones. I mean, you can see FBI members, some of them are part of it. You also see the sheriff, he's part of it. Basically, for the most part, you have some who believe in the Rakudushi and some who don't. Bottom line is this, and you need to know this before you join anything. And that includes a fraternity, that includes the Masons, although I did join the Masons, but I understood what they were talking about. And everybody in the Masons is not what you think it's, and everybody in the fraternity is not what it is either. The bottom line is this: religion. Religion has its followings. Look at the Islamic religion. You have a number of individuals who are actually utilizing religion in the form of terror. And that's basically what's going on with the Rakudushis. Now, some might be saying, well, Leon, how is all this relevant? Well, you know, a number of us get our influences from television. And because we get our influences from television, some of us act out what we see on television. Now, I'm enjoying the movie. Again, Tyler Perry has some good documentaries. Like them better than his plays and his commentaries because they actually depict at what's going on. And he also does a good job with putting Black people on the set. He writes, he directs. Bottom line is this: when you find yourself slipping away, getting weak, what do? You see, when you get into one of these cults and you're isolated from society because they couldn't have cell phones, they couldn't have money, they couldn't have computers. We get just like communism. Because if you think about a cult, that's why I'm doing this. It's just like communism. There's a centralized power. And the individuals who are part of a higher power really get all the benefits, while everybody else is depending on the higher power to give them something that the higher power promised them, but the higher power never delivers on the promise. So when we look at Tyler Perry's Ruthless, you are going to see some of the punishments that individuals take. And if you try to escape, violence happens. And the violence happens whether you're a man, woman, or child. If you're not loyal, the punishments are severe, like electric chairs. A lot of individuals getting chained up. I mean, think about the Branch Davidian compound with David Koresh. The FBI was moving. Now, the FBI blew that. So what did he do? He set everybody on fire. Now, a few people got out, but a number of individuals died. Jim Jones with the cyanide. In fact, if you look at the elder mother in this movie, a number of these individuals, they're not dying as of yet, but there's an element of drug going in their food. Some of it is cyanide. But I want you to just think about that a moment while I get into the PowerPoint about cults. Because this is something you need to know about. Actually, I don't want to do the Christian. Let me do this one. Now, again, with this PowerPoint, we're going to go, what is a cult? Now, again, this is not my PowerPoint, but this is going to tell you exactly what cults are. Boom, here we go. November 18, 1978, in northern Guyana, 913 followers of Jim Jones committed mass suicide at Jonestown after taking the life of a U.S. congressman. On March 27, 1997, in California, 39 followers of the Marshall Herf Applewhite, aka Bowen Duke, committed suicide in an attempt to join a spaceship that allegedly was hiding behind the comet Callie. Message: cults are unusual and bizarre. Cults are rare. Normal people don't have too much to be concerned about. But why are we concerned? Cults do not always appear unusual and bizarre. Cults are sadly not rare. Normal people ought to be concerned. Cults say something about God that isn't so. In other words, they're utilizing God, but God didn't say these words. So you go into the Bible and look at Acts 17:16. Now, while Paul waited for them at Athens, his spirit was stirred in him when he saw the city wholly given to idolatry. Now, as Christians, our hearts ought to be stirred up when we see abominable errors. So, in that movie, there's a lot of abomination that's taking place. If you believe in the Bible, when you watch Ruthless. Again, what is a cult? I'm going to give you the secular definition. It's a system of religious beliefs and ritual. Also, it's a body of adherents, a religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious. Also, it's the body of adherents. Well, these are alternative from the Christian religion. Now, there's even a problem with the Christian religion because I believe some of these churches, maybe not cults, but they're money machines. Again, there are a number of doctrinal characteristics of cults. One will typically find an emphasis on a new revelation from God, a denial of the sole authority of the Bible, a denial of the Trinity, a distorted view of God and Jesus, or denial of salvation by grace. Now, in the movie, there's a hate for government. Now, again, with the cult, it's a system of beliefs and ritual also. Going back to what I just mentioned, it's a system of religious beliefs and ritual, and it's unorthodox. Now, I gave you the secular definition. Now I'm going to give you the biblical definition. There are a number of doctrinal characteristics of cults. One will typically find an emphasis on new revelation from God, a denial of the sole authority of the Bible, a denial of the Trinity, a distorted view of God and Jesus, or a denial of salvation by grace. So you see the difference between the biblical definition, where the secular definition, they'll tell you it's a system of religious beliefs and it's unorthodox. Well, the biblical definition, they talk about the new emphasis on revelation from God, or emphasis on a new revelation of God, and a denial of salvation by grace. Now, in addition to the doctrinal characteristics of cults, many, not all cults, also have sociological traits. These include authoritarianism, I brought that up, exclusivism, dogmatism, closed-mindedness, susceptibility, compartmentalization, isolation, and even antagonism. On top of the doctrinal and sociological traits of cults, there are also some moral dimensions to be considered. Among those that crop up most often are legalism, sexual perversion, intolerance, and psychological or even physical abuse, which, if you watch the Rakudushis and Ruthless, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. And again, not every cult manifests every one of these traits. Now, 3 types of groups. Cults, there's an occult, and other religions. So a cult claims to be Christian, but it isn't. An occult does not claim to be Christian, and it's out of the mainstream. And then you have other religions, does not claim to be Christian, and is within the mainstream. Like maybe you're leftist. The Democratic Party, I believe, is a religion of its own, because they don't care who they put up. As long as they beat Trump, they follow each other, even if it's wrong. Now, cult, occult, or other religion. Well, this is what you're going to get. Jehovah's Witnesses, the Branch Davidians, Satanism, Islam, Judaism, Roman Catholicism, and witchcraft. Now, nobody else is doing any of this. Maybe there may be one person who's done something like this. It's more of a Bible scholar than I am. That's Ringo. He used to do videos, but he didn't do them on cults like I'm doing. Now, when we talk about the biblical examples, Gnosticism, this is a cult, believed that the body and soul were evil, but spirit was good and divine. Salvation is using knowledge to liberate the spirit out of the earthly dungeon of the body. Again, Gnosticism. It's believed that the body and soul were evil, but the spirit was good and divine. Salvation is usually knowledge to liberate the spirit out of the earthly dungeon of the body. Then you have Nicolaitanism. Nicolaitanism is believed in a religious hierarchy where one class of people were closer to God than others. Then you have witchcraft. The power comes from Satan. And then you have your Baal worship of the Canaanite fertility god known as Baal. Then you have, here's the twofold error of cults. Wrong theology, adding to the word of God, authority under someone else who's not God. In other words, authority under then other than the word of God. So going back to the wrong theologies, you're adding to the word of God, adding your own words. The authority is other than the word of God. You're subtracting from Jesus, and there's a manipulation of salvation. And of course, the manipulative practices, fear of searching outside the cult, dividing the loyalty of the follower. And there are a number of doctrinal characteristics of cults. One will typically find an emphasis on new revelation from God. Again, this is repeated. It's a denial of the sole authority of the Bible, a denial of the Trinity, a distorted view of God and Jesus, or denial of salvation by grace. Now, in Christianity, they believe in the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. That's the Trinity. Again, going back, the difference between the cult and the true Christianity basically lies in the belief. Well, the average cult member will confess a belief in Jesus Christ, a reliance on the Bible and his authority, and the devotion to God as a lifestyle. When in reality, all of the terms have been redefined. What appears on the surface to be Christian deviates greatly from what the scriptures actually teach concerning the key doctrines of the Christian faith. That's true. And you have a number of individuals who go to church, and what they do, they hide behind that Bible, but they don't practice the real doctrines of faith. This is why, particularly at the black churches, a number of the women, I call them Christian feminists, because they practice feminism while hiding under the religion of Christianity. And here are the manipulative practices. So, in addition to the doctrinal characteristics of cults, many, not all cults, also have psychological traits. These include authoritarianism. I've already given that before, but I'm going to give it to you again. There's a lot of exclusion, dogmatism, no open-mindedness at all, compartmentalization, susceptibility, and even antagonism. Now, again, there's a lot of intolerance, a lot of sexual deviance and perversion in these cults. Now, why do they exist? Well, one noted cult researcher observed that the cults are the unpaid bills of the church. The church has failed to doctrinally train its members. It has failed to make a real moral difference in the lives of its members. It has failed to meet people's deepest needs, and it has failed to provide people with a sense of belonging. The failure of the church is wide and deep, and this has made it easy for cults to flourish. Now, why did they exist? Indeed, the Christian church were more zealous in the true evangelism. The world would have been less cultic and proselytizing. Is this true? Do cults exist because of the failure of the church? Or said in another way, if the church did better, would cults go away? I don't believe so. God's sovereignty. For he said to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. For the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might shew my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. Therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he hardeneth. That's from Romans 9:15, 17, 18. And this is from Mark 4:11, 12. And he said unto them, unto you it is given to know the mystery of the kingdom of God, but unto them that are without, all these things are done in parables, that seeing they may see, and not perceive, and hearing they may hear, and not understand, least at any time they should be converted, and their sins should be forgiven them. And this is what cults try to do. They try to convert you, but they convert you the wrong way. What they're utilizing God's name, but God's name is in vain. But Sihon, king of Heshbon, would not let this pass him by, for the Lord thy God hardened his spirit and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into thy hand, as appeareth this day. Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 30. O Lord, I know that the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man that walketh to direct his steps. Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 23. This is from Proverbs, verse 16, chapter 9. A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps. The Lord hath made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil. What if God, willing to shew his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels, that's the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction, and that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy, where he had afore prepared unto glory. Again, this is not my PowerPoint. I'm taking this from and this came out in the summer of 2005. And this is from a church. Now, why are we concerned? Again, it says cults do not always appear unusual and bizarre. Cults are sadly, but not rare. Normal people ought to be concerned. Cults say something about God that is false. Acts 17:16. Now, while Paul waited for him at Athens, his spirit was stirred in him when he saw the city wholly given to idolatry. As Christians, our hearts ought to be stirred up. We see abominable errors. Now, if you look at this country, who's trying to dominate the country? The Islamic people. Because the Islamics don't like Christians. Again, here's the definition of everything as we sum it up. A cult claims to be Christian, but it isn't. An occult does not claim to be Christian. It's out of the mainstream. Another religion does not claim to be Christian within the mainstream. And again, here's what's contemporary and biblical: Gnosticism, Nicolaitanism, witchcraft, the Baal worship. Then you have your Jehovah's Witnesses, Branch Davidians, Satanism, Islam, Judaism, Roman Catholicism, and the Wicca. Again, you have the wrong theology, and this is what's in the cults: wrong theology. And they, according to some of these churches, there's a failure of the church. That's why cults exist. And when it comes to God, I'm just going to say this: not everybody is a Bible scholar. In fact, the King James Bible isn't the only Bible, but that's not what I'm really here to preach. I'm just giving an example on what I saw from Tyler Perry's Ruthless. Again, if you go back and you look at what a religious cult really is, it's basically, it comes from, the name has changed. It's a new religious movement. You have individuals that claim to be something that they're not, and they claim to be God. That's why you have your highest in Ruthless. And the characteristics of a cult, like I said, you have your authoritarian leadership, you have your isolation, your exploitation, and your mind control, and your exclusive truth. But going back, and believe it or not, education makes a big difference. Going back to Tyler Perry's Ruthless, as I share it, it's about a sex-crazed cult. The punishments are harsh. They don't get much food at all. There's no money. There's no computers. You do have your hierarchy, but if you go away from that hierarchy, you're going to get punished. you're going to get killed. And these individuals, they don't like the system of government. Now, where can I tell you right now who hates the system of government right now? The Democratic Socialists of America. So what I'm doing, I'm really tying Ruthless and some of these cults into the Democratic Socialists of America because they sound like a cult themselves because they follow the democratic principles. Whether the person who is running for power, like a Grand Plattner, who's now they're trying to get him to drop his bid for the senatorial, for the senatorship in Maine. But overall, I just want to say this. When it comes to these cults, and even politics, don't allow yourself to be brainwashed. You're going to be given a lot of misinformation. You're going to be told information that's not true. You're going to be given what I call hope. And I'm one who doesn't believe in hope. Everything is false until you make it a reality. But if you're going to practice God, you need to understand who God is. If you need to understand that religion, all religion is not the same. Again, religion is a way to control the masses of people. And the way these cults get a number of members, just like your socialists, they like to preach everything they want the younger kids in there. Why? Because they can manipulate them. Because that's what these cults are. That's what the Democratic Socialists of America are. And if you look at what you got on Ruthless, because those individuals, it's a cult, but you have a mix of loyalty and unloyalty. You have your authoritarianism. You have your harsh punishment. You have your men who are the soldiers, the women who are doing all the cooking. So you have some traditional values of old. But you also have a person who's hiding under God, but is really preaching Satanism. Because what he practices is not godly. Same-sex perversion with men, while some of the women are getting RAPED. But in the meantime, I just want you all to watch Ruthless and don't be influenced by what you see on Ruthless, and don't you be influenced by what you see in the cults. And I've said this before. It sounds too good to be true. Better go check it. Because if it is too good to be true, then there's something wrong. And what I'm going to say right now, the only way to free your mind is to educate your mind. Why? Well, if you use mind over matter, like the United Negro College Fund used to say, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And in the end, if you understand what's going on around you, politically, on your job, religiously, the mainstream media, and education, I just mentioned the 5 power conferences of society. It's already infiltrated by leftism in this country, communism, and particularly in the blue cities. See, those individuals don't have minds. They're weak people. They think they're going to get everything free. And see, I brought up Ruthless because it's just like communism. Again, communism, it's always individuals who are the highest. They have everything, but they promise everybody else something. And they keep everybody else dependent on them, when in essence, the highest ones They're the ones always getting everything. Why? Because they rule and they seek individuals who are weak minded, vulnerable, emotionally distraught. When it comes to somebody that has some intelligence, they can't fool. They know what's going on. That's what you see in your churches today. Churches aren't cults. They're just made with bad pastors who really utilize the women for their own selfishness. This is why a number of men don't go to church. But if you don't want to be part of a cult or anything that's going to manipulate you, educate yourself. And I say this as part of this video because it is true. If you use your mind, use your eyes, use your ears, understand that everything that you read isn't always true. And you know how to disseminate what you see and what you read, and then you utilize your mind, and then you have to look at the people around you. Don't listen to what they say, what they do, and understand that you're an individual. We're all individuals. But you can see that cult I told you about, the Rakudushis, they all believe in collectivism. And I brought this video up because I tied Ruthless to communism and socialism. And who wants communism and socialism here in the United States? The young folk. Because they're going to school, they're told by these professors to hate where they live. And you have individuals coming over here from where they used to live. They hated where they were living, but they certainly love to bring where they were living here to try to champion how good it was. What you just left, what you hated, but you want to bring that here. But when you have stupid American people, particularly the ones who listen to the mainstream media, listen to all these podcasts, particularly these left-wing podcasts, you look at all the money, again, just like in Ruthless, a lot of money is coming in the Ruthless from the cartel through the Rakudushi compound. Well, you look at George Soros and his son spending over $100 million on Democratic candidates so they can bring their socialist views to the forefront. And in the end, it's not going to work. But many of us who have a mind understand what's going on. Education is more than just going to school, getting college. It's understanding common sense. And what I see, many of us are filled by emotion, sense of entitlement, very spoiled, and something else. We're not grateful. And you have all these individuals who are preaching to get everything free. They know that doesn't work. Somebody's got to pay for it. And then in this country, like you saw on Ruthless, they hate the government, but yet they had individuals utilizing a couple of government people in their compound. Now, the ones that didn't agree with them, they were in a punishment trailer. They hate the government. They like the money. And that's what's wrong with a lot of people. Hypocrisy. They hate this country. They certainly benefit from this country. You have to ask yourself, where do you want to go with that? You hate something, but you benefit from it. And generally, if you benefit from it, you're going to stay until it runs out. That's basically what socialism, communism, basically spending other people's money. And eventually, other people's money runs out. But in the meantime, if you don't want authoritarianism, don't vote authoritarianism in, because that's the same as going to that cult. Because once you get into authoritarianism, it's pretty hard to get out. So I'm going to say this: utilize your mind. Why am I telling you that? Utilizing your mind, because in the end, you'd understand that knowledge is power. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some STEM content, please check my other channel out, the QCIS channel. On that channel, you get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, here's where you can find me. The 411 Talk Zone radio show, my main channel. You can find me right here on YouTube, formerly Twitter. You can also find me on Rumble and Truth Social. And for the QCIS channel, you can find me right here on YouTube, formerly Twitter, and of course, LinkedIn. And like I said before, you need to look at yourself, understand that success, everybody's not going to be a millionaire. Understand what you need to do in life. Because in this country, we keep criticizing success where we used to want to be successful. Who in the world wants to live in a third world country? I don't. So I'm going to tell you this. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Just know that the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. Doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. And if you don't like the shoe, change it. And once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and gracious day. God bless you. I'm out.